Hi, I'm Peter Chan, National Weather Service Program Lead of the Alaska Weather Show, and I have a very important change notice to share with you. The last TV broadcast of the Alaska Weather Show in the traditional sense over the airwaves will be on Saturday, June 30th. Starting on July 1st and thereafter, the National Weather Service will provide a modified web-based version of the program on a new YouTube channel. So that means you'll be able to find us. We'll be moving from @AKwx TV to @NWS Alaska, and you can go ahead and subscribe to that channel now. There will be a public comment period from May 15th through July 30th, so please send your comments or concerns to nws.service-change-comments@noaa.gov. And if you have any other questions, you may reach carrie.haisley at noaa.gov and donald.moore@noaa.gov. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
And moving on to the first graphic showing fire danger forecast for tomorrow, June 13th, for grass. You can see quite an area here of mostly very high fire danger north of the Alaska Range, Tanana Valley into the central interior, up into the Yukon Flats. No extreme dangers, but quite, a pretty widespread area of very high fire danger, and some of that up on the central north slope as well. Otherwise, pretty low here across southern Alaska, southwest interior, into the Panhandle, and the next frame here showing the forecast for spruce. And you can see again the highest areas there north of the Alaska Range, into the Tanana Valley, and also up over the Yukon Flats, with high and a couple of areas of very high fire danger. Looks like around the Fairbanks area and up there around Fort Yukon or so. And from there, going on to hazardous weather graphic here. For the upper Tanana Valley and 40 Mile Country, that area has a wind advisory out for winds of 20, gusting 50 miles per hour for this evening. And then another advisory here, that's flood advisory for the Koyukuk River there in the Koyukuk Valley. And then the flood watch continues out for the southeastern Brooks Range, for streams draining the southeastern Brooks Range. Possible flooding there, minor flooding here expected in the Koyukuk River, so nothing too serious yet. And from there, looking at satellite imagery, large area low pressure right along the southwest coast, bringing moisture up, clouds and rain over much of the western interior. From the western Alaska Range across the Kuskokwim Valley, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, down into Bristol Bay today, and kind of cloudy skies, areas of light rain, Cook Inlet, Kenai, had some light rain, Soldotna, and in Turnagain Arm, western Prince William Sound, Seward on up to Whittier, and Portage seeing rain today. Some thunderstorm activity breaking out in the Susitna Valley. Otherwise, that original push of moisture here hanging up along the Brooks Range there in the north slope, and drying out over the Panhandle as the remnants of that front just kind of dissipates over the southern areas, breaking out to some areas of sunshine this afternoon with not too bad conditions there. Lots of clouds out over the Bering Sea here with the next system up over the Russian Far East associated with this area. Clouds here will be slowly moving eastward over the next day or so. On the chart today, there's that 999 millibar low kind of stalling out along the southwest coast, or it did stall out along the southwest coast, slowly weakening, keeping southwest flow, a lot of moisture, areas of rain across all of the southwest interior, cool temperatures, showers all the way up to the north slope there, some rain along the Brooks Range, and again, some thunderstorm activity breaking out over the Susitna Valley, as well as areas of the eastern interior right on down into the Copper River Basin and the mountainous terrain there. there with rain over the western Prince William Sound area, Kenai Peninsula, and portions of Cook Inlet, showers Kodiak Island, and then rain here into the Pribilof Islands with some scattered shower activity here over the western, central, eastern Aleutian areas. And some sunshine, as I mentioned, breaking out over the Panhandle. Stay mostly dry there tonight. This week trough will kick off a few showers over the northern Panhandle. Showers of rain or snow depending on elevation. Snowfall levels around anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 feet here over southern Alaska. And, of course, below that be in the form of rain. And then this low weakens, moves inland, weakens into a trough as it moves inland, but it's going to keep it wet over the southwest interior areas. And kind of a break here over the Bering Sea with some isolated showers over the Aleutians. This system here tomorrow edges a little farther to the east, puts enough gradient there across the Bering Sea and moisture. So increasing winds, rain and snow, St. Lawrence Island up to the western Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait areas starting to affect the northwest coast, especially Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. Otherwise, this weakening trough continues to produce moisture, cloudy, cool conditions over the interior. In fact, a lot of clouds and cool conditions over south central Alaska. Isolated thunderstorms over the eastern interior once again. Some rain over the central and eastern Aleutians, and partly to mostly sunny for the southeast coast. That forecast good for Wednesday as well. And again, about the same here. Cloudy, cool temperatures, showery, south central Alaska into the Kuskokwim Valley, south central to southern Alaska. A little bit drier up there north of the Alaska Range. And then this front kind of stalling out over the Bering Strait with some moisture there, rain or snow in those areas with showers or rain over the western interior. And weak trough with some shower activity up over the eastern Arctic coast down into the central Brooks Range area. Chance of showers eastern Aleutians right up to Kodiak Island. And for the lows tonight in the 40s, just about everywhere here over southern Alaska, followed by highs near 60 for the Copper River Basin, otherwise in the 50s again. Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, upper 40s to lower 50s for the Kuskokwim Valley, and Bristol Bay, mid-50s Kodiak Island, in the 50s for the southeast coast. Lows in the 40s, except upper 30s for the portions of the Kuskokwim Valley, Bristol Bay, and the Kenai, or the, possibly the Kenai Peninsula as well, and Copper River Basin, followed by highs 55 to 60 for the southeast coast, lower 60s, Copper River Basin, 50s, south central Alaska, and Bristol Bay up north, lows in the 40s, set mid-30s for the Bering Strait and the Arctic coast, followed by highs 60 to 65 for the eastern interior, otherwise 40s and 50s everywhere else, 36 for Tin City, lows in the 40s, 30s for the Arctic coast, followed by highs 60 to 65 again, and for the eastern interior, otherwise in the 50s, cooling into the mid-30s here for the Seward Peninsula areas, but mid-40s for the Arctic coast, and lows here on the southwest coast for Tuesday morning, 35 to 40, lower 40s for Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, all of the Aleutians actually, low 39 for St. Paul and St. George, high 41, Savunga and Gamble, and 45 to 50 along the southwest coast. Mid to upper 40s for the Aleutians, Pribilofs, 52 for Alaska, and maybe Cold Bay, and then lows in the 40s, upper 30s for the Pribilofs, mid 30s for St. Lawrence Island, followed by highs Wednesday afternoon, mid 40s here for the southwest coast, and upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Unalaska may hit 51. That'd be the warm spot out that way. Otherwise, mid to upper 40s for the remainder of the Aleutians, and then St. Lawrence Island, highs right around 40. You can see a little bit milder there as you get into Bristol Bay.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hey, starting out west here, band of IFR, western Bering Sea down to the western Aleutians there, with the next front out in that area. Another band up here over the northern Bering Sea extending into the Bristol Bay area, Togiak, Cape Newenham. Marginal VFR over most of southern Alaska. Then some more IFR up along the North Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle. as you can see, improving down to the south and central northern interior out to the Arctic coast, VFR. For the afternoon, marginal VFR for the central and eastern Brooks Range on up to the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, north slope, much of the Arctic coast, again, VFR throughout the day into the afternoon and evening, while the interior, same thing, good VFR, and some VFR for Cook Inlet down to northern Kodiak Island through the Barrens, and areas of VFR for the Panhandle. Strip of IFR here from the Chukchi Sea down through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island area, St. Matthew Island, and marginal VFR for the Pribilof, southwest coast here, and into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay, mostly marginal VFR for the Aleutians. And then for Wednesday morning, more widespread IFR out here over the central southern Bering Sea and from just east of Amchitka Island all the way into about Nikolsky and then kind of up into the western Alaska Peninsula there. That area of IFR up across St. Lawrence Island into Nome through the Bering Strait and then up into the Chukchi Sea. Still not bad up over the North Slope and the Arctic coast, mostly VFR there, except for the marginal VFR here for the eastern Arctic coast. Conditions stay pretty good over the interior and mostly marginal VFR continues southern Alaska from the Alaska Range down to the North Gulf Coast as well as the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, see some improvement here, some VFR showing up now, becoming more widespread over the southeast coast. Still marginal for the Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and the Kenai Peninsula, northeast Bristol Bay into western Cook Inlet. So sit in the Valley Copper River Basin all the way up into the North Slope, good VFR. And the IFR now off the Arctic coast. Narrow strip of IFR here through the Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula, down across Nunivak Island, just grazing the Yukon Delta coast, and then some more IFR slipping on up into the western and central Aleutian areas with marginal VFR, eastern Aleutians of Kodiak Island. Passes Anatuvik, VFR, turning toward marginal again in the afternoon. Same forecast for Adigan. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, rainy, VFR, windy. Looks good, VFR flying there. Isabel, VFR. Mostly VFR from Antasta. Tanita, VFR most of the day, possibly marginal VFR eastern entrance at times, but generally looking pretty good there for Tanita. And Portage starting out marginal, becoming VFR by midday and through the afternoon. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here about 4,000 to 6,000 feet over the central and northern interior, 2,000 to 4,000 feet here across southern Alaska into the northern southeast coast for tomorrow morning, and kind of cool out over the southern Bering Sea areas. Icing could be some areas of mostly light mixed icing here, southern Alaska, and maybe up over the eastern Brooks Range area. Otherwise, nothing significant except with this next system coming out of the Russian Far East. See an increased icing threat with that coming in toward the St. Lawrence Island area and eventually toward the Bering Strait late tomorrow afternoon, and then that'll slide eastward tomorrow evening. And at jet stream level, kind of high pressure right through here. There's that next system coming out of the Russian Far East there. Southwest flow 75, picking up to about 95 knots here right along the western North Gulf Coast, and then just clipping the southern Panhandle, Prince of Wales Island, northwest at 115. And for the 9,000-foot winds, not much going on here across the central and eastern interior. Increasing winds here with this next system here, 40 to 50 knot winds there pulling the cold air down. Milder southwest flow up to 45 knots as that whole system starts to swing eastward, pushing in toward the Bering Strait. And at 3,000 feet, 50 knots southwesterlies in advance of that front here, coming into the northern Bering and the Bering Strait area, as well as the Chukchi Sea there. And as far as turbulence goes, moderate turbulence northwest coast along mountains, northern Seward Peninsula, and probably St. Lawrence Island and the southern Panhandle.
Hi, Hi, this is Ken Graham, Director of the National Weather Service. I'm in Alaska. I'm in Juneau and spent an incredible day today talking to the forecasters, the entire staff, electronics crew, everybody over at the Weather Service Forecast Office in Juneau. Absolutely amazing to hear about the uniqueness of where we are. And we met with partners today. Just an absolutely wonderful day. I want to say something I've never said before. There's a glacier over my shoulder. This is a glacier right there. We're talking about a video, talk about the uniqueness of this area in front of a glacier. Never said that before, so let's find some folks here. Come on in. Let's talk about some things. So first of all, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Aaron Jacobs. I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist for WFO Juneau.
Where are we at? This is amazing.
Yeah, this is the Mendenhall Glacier. This is our backyard. We have this great place that people recreate, and we forecast to keep people safe.
So talking about keeping people safe, I've learned some things today about the uniqueness of the area, the hazards, so much marine. I mean, you're flying in here or taking a boat, you're not coming in, right? So talk about the uniqueness of working here.
So the uniqueness of working here is that we have a lot of remote locations, not a lot of information, but we still need to provide the same information that the lower 48 provides. So we use all the skills and information that we know and pattern recognition to be able to put out this forecast the best that we can to give the public the best information possible.
So you're on the desk, you're working here. What are some of the biggest challenges that you have that maybe others don't have in other parts of the country?
It's definitely difficult to get to some of these places to help with our IDSS and with our partners. It is difficult to get to some of these locations and really partner with these emergency managers within these communities. But there are other ways that we have been able to utilize technologies to help bridge those gaps, and we're just hoping that in the future we'll be able to visit those places to give the real information hands-on like we should.
What would you say is the biggest hazard?
Biggest hazard is this is twofold. Probably like you were saying, is the way to get in here, in and out, is by boat or by airplane. So typically our marine forecast and our aviation forecast is pretty important for life and property, and also just travel, just to get in and around this area. So to get food and your mail, your milk, emergency equipment, we need to have those lines of communication and transportation lines open.
Incredible. Thanks for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, who else is going to talk to me? Come on in. We're going to bring some other folks in here, and the very first thing, the same type of thing. Come on in. Tell us who you are and what you do.
My name's Caleb Cravens. I'm a meteorologist here at WFO Juneau.
Now, one of the things that I heard many times today, looking around at the whole group, many times today, the size of your county warning area compared to what state?
Florida.
Florida. Everybody keeps saying this, compared to Florida. So how about the uniqueness? One office, huge size. What makes that unique and challenging?
I would say some of the challenging parts is, you compare the state of Florida to the area that we're forecasting for, and you look at how many, WFOs there are in Florida, and if you compare it to our area, there's just one of us. And, it's the whole area, it's unique. It has its own challenges. You're looking at marine weather, you're looking at aviation, you're looking at winter weather. So anything, you got avalanches, you have landslides, and then also you have flooding concerns due to heavy precipitation. We are in the rainforest here in Southeast Alaska.
Now, something that you all talked to me about today that I thought was interesting as well. I mean, I hear sometimes, the population differences between Florida and Alaska, but talked about commerce. I mean, think about what Alaska contributes to the economy. Can you talk about that? There's some important stuff going on here.
Right. A lot of people may not realize it, but the amount of commerce that goes into the Gulf of Alaska, whether it be via air or marine, we have also cruise ships, so tourism. In Juneau, in the summer, our population doubles every day. We hold up to about 6 cruise ships every day, each cruise ship holding around 3,000 to 5,000 people, even 6,000 at sometimes. You get 6, that's 30,000 people, and our population here in Juneau is 35,000. So just that in itself, it adds forecast challenges. But the cargo as well that comes in to Alaska through the lower 48 that connects the traffic that connects Alaska to the lower 48, food.
Seafood industry is just huge. Talk about the seafood economy in Alaska.
Fishing here is a part of everyday life here. A lot of people make their money from fishing. Millions of dollars go into the fishing industry here in Alaska. So the people on the water are constantly looking at our forecast, and so us being able to get accurate and timely information to our mariners is really important here.
I'll tell you, thank you for what you do. What a big impact you have. What a great time being able to meet with everybody here and hear how important the Weather Service Forecast Office, Juneau, is to supporting the economy, supporting the safety of mariners in flight. Just absolutely amazing to hear the stories today. And we're talking about the forecast around the area, around Juneau and portions of Alaska. It's so complex. I mean, you think about there's ice, there's sea level, but then you look at mountains. I mean, it's just complexity of the entire forecast. And now we're going to bring in meteorologists in charge. I mean, Jeff, this is there's a glacier back here. Jeff, I don't know. I just wanted to make sure we reiterate there's a glacier back behind me.
2.5 miles from our forecast office, folks.
Which is amazing. So please introduce yourself.
I'm Jeff Garman. I'm the meteorologist in charge here at the National Weather Service in wonderful, beautiful Juneau, Alaska. So
talk about the complexities of the forecast. I mean, you think about, again, a mountain. You got a lake, sea level, all this going on. How much is that a challenge? How challenging is that?
It's really tough, Ken, for the models to resolve this.
Yeah.
And we talk about, we look at our forecast, it's in grid points, right? In those 2.5 kilometer grids that we have. And the fact is, in this one grid right here that we're trying to forecast for, there's a 5,000-foot mountain up next to sea level. And this area right here has its own microclimate. From where the glacier is right here, there can be a 15-degree difference between here and the airport. And that's only how many miles? Yeah. Maybe 5 miles at the most. You go to North Douglas, you can have a foot of snow over there, not get much here, and you reverse that back, you could end up with a foot of snow here, and then downtown Juneau gets an inch. And it's not a very large area wide, large area that we're talking about here. And it takes time here as a forecaster to really build that knowledge of know when to deviate from the computer model. So we'll always need forecasters here at least for many more years, at least in my career.
And being in charge of the office here in Juneau, what would you say is one of the biggest challenges you have?
Well, I think, keeping a full staff here is probably the biggest challenge we have because, let's face it, it's 2,000 to almost 3,000 miles away from some of these folks' families. And so that's something when you move here you have to think about a little bit. And it takes a long time to get back to, quote, home from Juneau. So those are some of the bigger challenges, but we find ways to overcome that, and we support each other as an office, and we have a nice team here.
That's what we always say, National Weather Service, we're family. No matter where you are in the Weather Service, we're family here. So right here, great video with the meteorologist in charge, Jeff Garman, and a glacier. So just amazing to be able to talk about the great things that you do. Thanks, Jeff.
And did he say glacier?
I did.
Okay.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Marine forecast for the south coast of the Panhandle tomorrow morning or through the afternoon, through the day Tuesday. Northwest at 25 knots, seas 9 to 10 feet. Central coast northwest at 20 and west at 10 for the north coast. Lynn Canal, south winds 20 knots, northwest 15-knot winds for Stevens Passage. Clarence Strait, winds northwest at 25 knots with 5-foot seas. Moving on to the day Wednesday for the south coast, here lighter winds in the forecast out of the northwest at 15. West-northwest at 10 knots on the central coast and variable winds 5 to 10 knots on the north coast. Seas running 5 to 7 feet. And for Lynn Canal, south winds at 15 knots. Stevens Passage, south winds at 10, seas only 2 feet. And Clarence Strait, looking at northwest winds at 20 knots. For Prince William Sound, light variable winds for the day Tuesday at 10 knots or less with slight seas. North Gulf Coast, light variable winds as well at 10 knots with 6-foot seas. Southwesterlies at 20 knots for both the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay with seas running 4 to 5 feet there. Cook Inlet, small craft advisories, south winds 25 knots with 7-foot seas. And for Wednesday, Cook Inlet, southwest winds at 10 knots with 3-foot seas. Variable winds at 10 knots with 3-foot seas for the Kamishak Bay area. And an east breeze at 15 for the Barren Islands, seas at about 5 feet there. And the western North Gulf Coast also looking at an easterly wind at 15 knots. But the eastern North Gulf Coast, light variable winds. And for Prince William Sound, light east wind at 10 with 2-foot seas. Kodiak Island, southwest winds 20 to 25 knots with 6 to 8 foot seas. Variable winds at 10 to 15 knots here for the Alaska Peninsula, becoming southwest as you get up into Bristol Bay, and about 15 knots there with 4-foot seas. And moving on to Wednesday, Kodiak Island, variable winds at 10 knots here, except Shelikof Strait, predominantly northeast at 15. Seas running 4 feet in the strait to 7 feet there on the east side of Kodiak. And the Alaska Peninsula, light variable winds for the day Wednesday at 10 knots with 2 to 5 foot seas. And a light breeze there for Bristol Bay, only at 10 knots with seas down to 2 feet. Eastern and central Aleutians for Tuesday, Adak all the way to Unalaska Island, light variable winds with seas only running 2 to 4 feet there. Same thing for Mchitka Island, light variable winds at 10 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas, and variable at 10 to southwest at 15 for the western Aleutians. And then for the day Wednesday, pick up a little bit more of a breeze here. Western Aleutians, west-southwest, 15 to 20 knots with 5 to 7 foot seas. Central Aleutians, south winds 20 knots there, seas 3 to 6 feet. And for the east side, eastern Aleutian areas, Unmak and Alaska Island, south winds of 15 knots with seas 3 to 6 feet. Southwest coast tomorrow, west winds 20 knots. St. Lawrence Island, west winds 20 knots. Norton Sound, south winds at 20 knots. Southwest 30-knot winds for St. Matthew Island, and the Pribilofs looking at southwesterlies at 15. And for Wednesday, for St. Paul and St. George Islands, southwest winds 20 knots. West at 25 knots for the St. Matthew Island area. And for St. Lawrence Island, gale warnings as that front approaches, or just to the west of St. Lawrence Island, so 35-knot gales in the forecast there. Arctic coast, central coast, southwest 15, west-southwest 15 to 20 on the eastern coast. Small craft advisories for the western Arctic coast, south winds 25 knots. And for the Chukchi Sea, south winds 25 to 30 knots. And for Wednesday, south-southeasterlies, 30 knots for the Chukchi Sea from Wales to Cape Beaufort, and western Arctic coast south at 20, south 15 for the central coast, and kind of a variable wind pattern here at 10 to 15 knots for the east side. For tonight, again, that low off the coast moves inland and weakens, keeps it wet over the southwest interior. Another trough keeps a lot of shower activity here across southern Alaska, right into the northern panhandle. And then for tomorrow, next system starting to affect the Bering Strait, northern Bering Sea areas, increasing wind and precipitation there. Areas of rain, western interior, showers, isolated thunderstorms, cool temperatures of the rest of the state, some sun for the panhandle. Looks like more sun for the southeast coast on Wednesday. Windy and wet over the western interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.